Mr. Speaker, I rise today to make a statement about efficiency in government, because there was a statement from the governor of my state that many of us found quite surprising, where he recently said that long before there was DOGE, California was already streamlining government to be more efficient, responsive, and accountable. Apparently California being a model of efficiency in the governor's view. This came as a surprise to many of us because in the course of just 5 years during Governor Newsom's tenure, the state budget increased by $124 billion. That's over a 50% increase in spending without really any measurable improvement in government performance. When you look at California ranking first in the nation in homelessness, in poverty, in unemployment, having some of the worst roads, some of the worst achievement gaps in our schools. But I did want to highlight just a few examples that I think are particularly revealing when it comes to the low quality of government service that citizens of California are receiving, and also, to some extent, the lessons that we can draw from that here at the federal level, where I think continuing to improve the quality of government service, giving taxpayers a higher return on their tax dollars, remains a vital imperative. So remember, the governor said that California is a model of efficiency. His exact words, California is already streamlining government to be more efficient, responsive, and accountable. Well, apparently this includes a $128 billion bullet train that still shows no signs of coming into existence. Now, that's the estimated total cost. The amount that's already been spent is somewhere in the neighborhood of $16–17 billion. But we're now 18 years into this thing, and not a single bit of track has been laid despite all of this massive spending. And the New York Times has estimated that the project isn't even on track to be finished this century. Another example, the state auditor in California found that the state spent $24 billion to combat homelessness and completely lost track of the money. Couldn't say where it went, couldn't say what impact it had on outcomes. There were no metrics. And during the time that this spending occurred, homelessness in California absolutely skyrocketed to the extent that the state has about half of the total unsheltered homeless in the entire country. The state also squandered $32 billion at a minimum on unemployment fraud. So what's going on in Minnesota is small potatoes compared to what we witnessed in California during the COVID years, where the state failed to take basic fraud protection measures that other states had taken. And as a result, fraudsters were easily able to purloin the state treasury and use those billions to fund further criminal activities. Now, I say that there are lessons for the federal government because during the last administration, the labor secretary in California most responsible for that entire fiasco was actually nominated to be the Secretary of Labor here in Washington, D.C., although never confirmed by the Senate. So to some extent, the lesson was learned. Or we have recent reports, just in the last couple weeks, that the $650 million 911 system that the state has been charging Californians on their phone bill for several years now is being scrapped entirely because the technology doesn't work. They spent $650 million building this so-called next generation 911 system, and our system does very much need to be updated. But because the state couldn't manage to get the technology right, it is all going to waste. Those funds will never be recovered, and our 911 system remains antiquated as a result. And bear in mind, Sacramento is a stone's throw from Silicon Valley, where the technology that is required here is fairly rudimentary in terms of what is needed. And I would just mention one final example, which is the California state capitol itself. Because our governor has had a lot to say about certain renovations going on at the White House, and yet the California state legislature approved several years ago a $1.2 billion renovation of the state capitol itself. I voted against that measure, by the way. But now the cost of that seems to have ballooned, and we don't know even by how much, because the state is refusing to say, despite the persistent efforts of local journalists to get an answer, and other legislators, as to how much this project is costing our taxpayers. They won't even say how much. But we have gotten some hints of some of the measures that the project leaders have taken, such as shipping stones to Italy in order to be treated and refined. So it does not seem that this particular project is exactly a model of efficiency either. So I bring these examples up to highlight the need for reform in my home state, to reorient the way our government works towards a paradigm of citizen service, because we see corruption and incompetence and special interests and a whole host of other agendas that stand in the way of the use of tax dollars to actually serve our citizens. And indeed, California is the exact opposite of a model of efficiency, as we sacrifice the most and get the least in return. So I'll continue to do everything I can to change that paradigm in California, as well as define ways to learn from it and to reorient our federal government towards a model of citizen service and efficiency as well.